So social constructionism is key to understanding body politics. And it's the idea that these social categories like race, class, gender are invented, that they're made socially meaningful, and that they're constructed by people through communication. So so like this example of money, right? So money is itself really worthless until we all agree that this monetary system is that this bill, for example, is worth $100, right? But what is it really? Fundamentally, what is it? It is paper that's been printed, right? That's been mass printed by the Federal Reserve, right? But we agree that this has value. And really, this is true for all of our identity categories, right? There's nothing necessarily uh, meaningful in race or necessarily meaningful in race, class, and gender, except they become socially meaningful. That as a society, we use communication to create and find these categories valuable, right? And this connects to the notion of the arbitrariness of signs. So Sorrells in the book uses the example of like a red light and a green light, right? And so as a society, right, we agree that green light means go, right? And what does red light mean? Red light means stop, right? And they, but there's nothing necessarily, but that's very arbitrary, right? There's nothing necessarily innate in the color green that says go, unless we agree that green says go. And then she also says that green light and red light, right? They have they come into meaning because of the system that they work together to create, right? And a lot of and that's very true of socially constructed categories, particularly like self and other, right? So for example, a lot of our categories are binary categories. So you're either one or the other, right? So for example, how do people who are white know that they are white? They know that they're white because of the presence of people of color. And how do people of color come to find out that they're people of color? They know that they're people of color because their people are white. And we make those distinctions meaningful. But in and of themselves, they're not necessarily meaningful. In absence of difference, oftentimes people don't know that that social identity category doesn't get marked. So, for instance, some people of color, move from Jamaica, right? I heard about a woman, she moved from Jamaica to the US, and she had spent her whole life in Jamaica. And then once she arrived in like the US, she realized she was black. In this context, she was black. But in Jamaica, that her skin color meant something else, right? And so you can kind of see how these are constructs. They're created and they become groups in culture decide what is meaningful and what those differences actually mean and entail, right? What those differences signify, right? But the symbols themselves are arbitrary. But that does not mean that social constructionism doesn't have lived material effects, that it doesn't affect bodies and who is oppressed and opportunities and where people live, right? Although they're socially constructed, it doesn't mean they're not real. It just means that they become culturally meaningful.